I often hear and read that Black America is experiencing a crisis of leadership. They say we don't have anyone willing or able to take us where we need to go. They criticize those who put themselves out there as not being sharp enough, or disciplined enough, or mainstream enough. They're either too black or not black enough. They're either too academic or too street. People constantly say that black activists must have ulterior motives. They say that black strategic growth is unfeasible. They'll say things like, oh, this group wants us to separate. No way, we can't do that. Another group wants us to work with the system. People say, no, we can't do that. The system's not for us. No matter what, folks will always say, no way, we can't do that. The naysayers will say, oh, they want us to sacrifice our money, our names, our reputations, our comfort, our stability. But what are these so-called leaders sacrificing? They complain about financing black causes because every penny isn't accounted for the way they want it to. They'll say things like, the nerve of that man. I saw him show up to that conference in a Mercedes. Or, he's taking our money and staying at a five-star hotel instead of the Red Roof Inn. How dare he? They might say things like, man, he's problematic. His politics don't line up with mine in every way. I can't listen to him. Or, she doesn't confront all of my allies' issues and concerns. I can't align myself with her. See, this is the real problem. We're undermining our own progress. It's not a crisis of leadership, it's a crisis of followership. We have to stop looking for the right person to tell us what to do next. We're fooling ourselves if we think we just need one individual to tell us and take us where we need to go. We're being ridiculous and unrealistic by waiting for someone without sin to rise up from the dust and unite the masses with fiery prose or rosy rhetoric. So many of us are waiting for that perfect leader that's never done anything wrong or said anything that we disagree with. No man is perfect, and if we're waiting for one who is, we might as well accept our lowly position in this American hierarchy. We can no longer afford to be seduced by passion and style and celebrity. We have to start being taken in by ideas and plans and processes. There was a time when it made sense having a few figureheads representing our causes and explaining to the world that we're human too, and we just want our rights to be recognized and respected. But that time has passed. Those leaders, they were either gunned down or locked up. Those in power have heard our cries for justice. They've ignored them. They know what their system does to us. They don't care, because caring doesn't benefit them. In fact, it makes them uncomfortable. They understood Martin's passion. They still murdered him. They recognized Malcolm's wisdom. They still murdered him. They saw all the good the Black Panthers did. They still used every trick in the book to destroy them. The old mantra, if you kill the leader, you kill the movement, still rings true. That's why we have to stop investing in people and start investing in ideas and plans. Because you can't murder an idea. You can't incarcerate a plan. Somehow, so many of us still want to reason with those who ignore our pleas for justice. We still want to see the good in the same system that goes out of its way to ignore the good in us. We continue to plead for justice and mercy and opportunity. For some reason, we're still trying to prove our humanity to a group of people who refuse to be humane. A dog doesn't have to tell you it's a dog. You see his tail wagging and hear it bark and you just know. So a man sure as hell shouldn't have to tell you he's a man. But the custodians of this system we call America, our senators and congressmen, our lawmakers and judges and officers, they watch us walk and talk and see us working and playing and eating and drinking the same way they do. But they call us every name in the book except human. They never treat us like we're men. Really, read an article, watch a speech by an elected official, or a press conference by a police chief. They'll use every word in the book to describe us except man and woman. They call us thugs, animals, perpetrators, assailants. And this is even true when we're the ones that are victimized, when we're the ones being slaughtered, being abused, being brutalized. But see, we get caught up on these talking points about white supremacy and white privilege and lose track of the fact that neither of those things is real. What we call white privilege is really just those in power treating people that look like them with a reasonable amount of dignity and autonomy and respect. It's a group of people being recognized as human. When you see a white person shopping without being followed around the store, that's not white privilege. That's how a business is supposed to treat its customers. When you see a white person waving a gun at a police officer and still get taken into custody unharmed, that's not privilege. That's human rights being exercised and recognized. What we always call white privilege is actually black punishment. They're not getting some special reward for being white. We're being punished and abused for being black. When we call it white privilege, we're taking them off the hook for their racism and discrimination and acting like they don't know what's going on. The same is true about white supremacy. There's nothing supreme about whiteness. People of color are the biggest purveyors, promoters, and perpetuators of white supremacy. We're the ones that bow down and beg for their respect and recognition. We buy into the myth of wealth and power as a sign of superiority and ignore the great lengths of evil and ruthlessness that have gone into amassing that wealth and power. We ignore the centuries of wickedness that have been inflicted upon us as if they have no effect on the present. We accept the vile racism and destructive effects of present-day policies like mass incarceration and police brutality. We buy into the fallacious thinking behind respectability politics and capitalism as a source of freedom. We seem to accept that we're sipping from a smaller cup of rights than they are, like we're just so lucky to be in this country, their country, that we have to accept whatever lot we're given. That's not white supremacy, that's a black inferiority complex. Every time we blame ourselves for the violence inflicted upon us historically or for shortcomings that are created and exacerbated by our intentionally ineffective political, educational, healthcare, and economic injustice systems, that's not white supremacy. That's the black internalization of abuse and neglect. That's us apologizing for not recovering from the constant and continuing assault on black culture and black people. It's not white supremacy. It's time to stop begging for what's rightfully ours. They're called rights because everyone is entitled to them, not just those whom the politicians say they belong to. We can't continue asking for our humanity to be acknowledged. We don't have to petition the courts to accept our culture. We can't expect Congress to legislate the acceptability of blackness. We can't hope the president will sign an executive order mandating that we be given the same opportunities as everyone else. We have to plan and produce and procure our own freedom and independence. Just as we can live in our own homes, independent of our neighbors, our people can live right next to those who despise us in this country that was built on our blood, our sweat, and our tears without sacrificing our individuality and humanity. We simply need to develop a plan and implement a system that allows us to do so. We can no longer afford to operate from the old civil rights playbook. Boycotts, rallies, marches, and sit-ins. Boycotts aren't nearly as effective when they're clearly temporary. It's hard to boycott someone that you rely on for your everyday needs. Marches and rallies aren't as powerful when there's no shock value to police assaulting innocent protesters. I often hear people say, we're playing checkers and they're playing chess. The truth of the matter is we're playing checkers and chess and they're playing Monopoly and Battleship. But I'm not talking about the board games. They're controlling and colonizing property all over the world and charging everyone who happens to land on it. And they're launching missiles and dropping bombs on anyone who stands in their way. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sell you that age-old narrative of white people as the oppressors of black people. I actually cringe when I hear my brothers and sisters call anyone alive today their oppressor. Oppression is a function of power and control and ability to exert that power and control. When we were being whipped and chained and enslaved and beaten and lynched, they were exerting power and control. There was a time that power and control belonged strictly to white people. That time is past. Now that power and control are functions of the systems that they built. But they're not the only ones running those systems or making the choices that keep those systems alive. I've seen black police beat and murder innocent, untried, unconvicted black people. I've seen black prosecutors fighting to secure unjust verdicts against black people. I've watched black judges hand down cruel sentences to black people and follow them up with harsh rhetoric centered on respectability politics. I've seen black politicians introduce and promote bills that harm our youth and our most vulnerable citizens. I've seen black bankers tell black business people that they don't qualify for loans based on unfair standards that perpetuate the racial wealth gap. I've seen black employers work black employees harder than white employees and discipline black employees quicker than white employees. We have a racist justice system even with black officers and officials. We have a racist healthcare system, even with black physicians and a high number of black nurses. We have a racist education system, even with black teachers and principals and superintendents. We have a racist finance system, even with black bankers. Racist hiring practices, even with black human resource managers. The list goes on. The system was built to be racist and will continue to be racist as long as it operates the way in which it was designed. The fact of the matter is that white people don't even have to be racist to ensure that systemic racism continues. I say all this to say that we perpetuate the myth of white supremacy every time we call them our oppressors. It's not them that's oppressing us. It's the system that their ancestors built that's oppressing us. Don't cede that power to them because they haven't earned it. I've seen their politicians and corporate leaders. I've heard them speak. Very seldom do they exhibit a type of brilliance or genius or sharpness that inspires any type of awe or amazement or even admiration. They certainly aren't smart enough to orchestrate the systemic and systematic racism that we're all experiencing. They've just been handed a system that allows them to thrive at the expense of others. At most, our white neighbors and co-workers and politicians are suppressors, but they're most definitely not oppressors. They use their numbers and the policies that are in place to suppress so-called minorities. They suppress our vote and political voice through gerrymandering. Then they use the laws and policies that allows them to create to suppress our rights and freedoms. They suppress our property ownership and economic growth by stifling our financial opportunities. They suppress our knowledge and understanding through miseducation. They suppress our knowledge of and communication with other downtrodden and suppressed people through control of media outlets. They suppress our pride and dignity and self-love by either criminalizing, marginalizing, or criticizing our culture. I know, all that suppression sure sounds like oppression, but oppression implies that we have no choice. Oppression implies that we're trying to get out of this system, and our rebellions and uprisings are crushed by those who want to keep us down. Oppression implies that we're doing more than fighting to be included in the American way. It implies that we aren't just begging to be acknowledged and respected. It implies that we're not just looking for jobs and opportunities. It implies that we haven't been dreaming the American dream. Oppression implies that we've been looking for a way out instead of a way in. Oppression implies that we're fighting and being beat. We're not being oppressed because we haven't been trying to get out. We've acquiesced to the way things are. We love capitalism. We love materialism. We love the idea of just going to work without the responsibility of ownership. We love letting the school system decide how and what to teach our children. We love shopping for food instead of growing it. We love our unexceptional healthcare system and running to the hospital every time we cough or sneeze. We love calling the police to referee petty disagreements and keep the peace in our neighborhoods. We love the idea of locking away whole demographics of our society and throwing away the key. Most of us would never complain at all if America's politics and policies provided us with a fair share of the spoils of all the havoc and racism and warmongering that our nation indulges in. We're not being oppressed, we're being denied. And it's not just by white people, it's by everyone who submits to the system and works to further its goals and extend its reach, regardless of who it hurts or what it destroys. What so many of us call oppression is really just rejection. It's not that we're being held down, we're just being left out. For far too many of us, the problem is not that we want more and are being deprived of the chance to get it. The problem is that we want everything they have and we want it the same way they get it. We want to own the companies that pay poverty wages. We want to run the prisons that over-incarcerate our brothers and sisters. So many of us don't care if the system improves. We just want to be a part of it. We're just looking for equal access. After all this time, Black Americans are still seeking integration. It's time for that to change. This is not to say that we can or should just up and leave. We don't have to completely separate or segregate. Our homes are here. Our lives are here. We built this country. We are the art and the culture and the voice and the history of America. We don't have to give that up, but what we do have to do is change. We have to change our goals. We have to change our methods. We have to change our ideas. We have to think bigger and dream bigger and work for the benefit of the many instead of the few. We have to stop being blinded by the mythical idealism of rugged individuality. We have to know that we're better together. We're safer together. We're smarter together. If two heads is better than one, what about 40 million heads? What about 40 million minds concentrating on the same thing? For 80 million eyes facing in the same direction, or 80 million feet stampeding over every obstacle and barrier placed in our way. We can make that happen. But first, we have to stop what we're doing right now. We have to stop idealizing this system we call America. We have to stop fighting to be cogs in the very machine that was built to exploit us. We can no longer center our struggle around the needs and wants and goals of those already in power. We can no longer let others dictate our morality and consciousness. We must stop associating power and privilege with being proper. We must stop looking to those who benefit from our struggles for advice on how to overcome them. Only once we accept that the American dream has always been a nightmare for our people will we want to wake up and build something real. The good news is that now is a real good time. It may be better than ever. Our collective consciousness has been stimulated. More and more of us are waking up. Many who were previously aloof, either ignorantly or willfully, are recognizing the evils of the political and educational and economic and healthcare and justice systems. But just as high as our frustration is, so is our understanding. As much as we struggle individually, we have so much collectively. Our access to information is higher than ever. Our access to credit and finance is higher than ever. Our access to education is stronger than ever. Our influence on local politics is stronger than ever. We have the inputs and the ability to build a black infrastructure. We're in the best position we've ever been in to exploit the system that's been exploiting us for hundreds of years. It's no longer a question of can we do it. It's now a question of do we really want to. I know I do. Do you?